Welcome to Isle of Wight in the Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office. I'm Deputy Alicia Paul. I'm the Public Information Officer, spelled Alicia, A-L-E-C-I-A, Paul, P-A-U-L. I'm getting ready to email you information. It will include the affidavits for the search warrant for Andarius McClelland's DNA, his cell phone, his person, his house. It does not have the certified copies from the courts. We're still waiting on those. Our investigators are getting those. As soon as I get them, I will send them to you. It also has the criminal complaint and his mugshot. Giving statements today will be Sheriff James R. Clark Jr., James, common spelling, R. Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E, Jr., our operations captain, Captain Tommy Potter, Tommy, T-O-M-M-Y, Potter, P-O-T-T-E-R. He will discuss the timeline of events. And the investigation sergeant, Chris Coughlin, K-R-I-S-C-O-U-G-H-L-I-N, is here for any other details that may arise. Following the press conference, we will be available for comments briefly. Any questions? Sheriff Clark has a swearing in at 2 o'clock. So Sheriff Clark is going to start the press conference now. Thank you.
Chris's name, how do you spell that? Chris Coughlin.
K-R-I-S-C-O-U-G-H-L-I-N. Okay. And he's the Sergeant of Investigations. Okay? Thank you. Sheriff Clark.
Good afternoon. First, we want to give condolences to the Selby family. The loss of their loved one, Miss Aonesty Selby, was senseless. I want to give thanks to the following agencies for their support in this investigation: United States Army Central Investigation Division, James City County Police Department, and the Newport News Police Department. I want to thank the Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office investigators and deputies who responded and worked on this tragic incident. Also to our dispatchers who received and relayed pertinent information. Especially to our investigators of this Sheriff's Office. Their commitment to identifying and locating the offender was relentless. Their efforts did not cease until an arrest was made. I want to publicly commend them for their diligence. On Friday, January 13th, 2023, James City County Police Department sent a teletype that they were investigating a missing person. That night, the family of Aonesty Selby notified the Sheriff's Office that they had discovered her body on a path located off of Blue Ridge Trail in Isle of Wight County. Our office responded and confirmed the decease of a young black female. At this point, the family was consoled and comforted, and the investigation began. Again, through the tenacious work of the Sheriff's Office Investigative Division, Andarius McClelland was peacefully taken into custody in the city of Newport News. At this time, Captain Potter will give the timeline.
Thank you, Sheriff. As the Sheriff previously stated, on Friday morning, the 13th, we received a teletype from James City County Police Department concerning 18-year-old Aonesty Selby, who was considered missing from their jurisdiction. At approximately 9:05 p.m. that same evening, our 911 center received a call from the mother of Aonesty Selby stating that they were on a logging path near Orbit Hunt Club. They were at that location because they had received information from a friend of Aonesty who actually on Wednesday night, the 11th, had shared her location via social media. That friend did not see that location share until Friday when she heard the news that Aonesty was missing. When the mother of Aonesty Selby notified our dispatch that they were on that logging path, they were advised to stand by until deputies could arrive. They did not, but they proceeded to search the roads and the paths in that area. They unfortunately discovered the body of Aonesty Selby that evening. Our deputies arrived 12 minutes after that 911 call was replaced. Our investigators and other personnel secured the crime scene and began our initial investigation, which included a forensic examination of Aonesty's phone, which was recovered at the crime scene. Based on information received that night, which was confirmed by the cell phone examination, Aonesty, earlier that day, earlier on Wednesday, took an Uber from Williamsburg to an apartment complex on Coral Key Place in Newport News. She arrived in Newport News at 1:49 p.m. on Wednesday, January the 11th. Based on the investigation, it was determined that Aonesty may have been seeing a guy named Darius who lived in Newport News. Darius was later determined's real name was Andarius McClelland. In fact, sent Aonesty money via Cash App to pay for the Uber from Williamsburg to Newport News. Investigators began a search for Andarius McClelland. That search revealed that he and his brother resided in an apartment on Coral Key Place. Also, it was determined that a 2021 Dodge Charger with North Carolina license plates was registered to Andarius' brother. During the course of the investigation, investigators searched the Flock LPR camera system. That 2001 Dodge Charger registered to Andarius' brother is caught on an LPR camera leaving Isle of Wight County and entering Newport News at 10:47 p.m. on the 11th. Interviews with Andarius' brother revealed that Andarius and Aonesty were at the residence in Newport News on the 11th, and they both left together at approximately 7:15 p.m. that evening. During the investigation, it was learned that Andarius' brother kept a 9mm handgun in the home, and on the morning of Friday, January 13th, Andarius McClelland attempted to sell that firearm but was unsuccessful. That firearm, which we believe is the murder weapon, was recovered from the house as a result of the search warrant conducted in Newport News last night. Based on several other interviews and our investigative processes, search warrants were obtained for the home and person of Andarius McClelland, his brother's car, which was impounded by our investigators yesterday morning. It's important to note that between Saturday, the 14th, and Tuesday morning, the 17th, Isle of Wight investigators conducted surveillance on various locations throughout Newport News and Williamsburg in hopes of locating Andarius McClelland. Tuesday night, January 17th, with the assistance of Newport News Police Department, a search warrant as well as an arrest warrant were executed at the home of Andarius McClelland. He was taken into custody and transported to our office. Andarius McClelland told our investigators that he and Aonesty had been dating off and on for the past 2 months, and that from time to time she would come to his apartment or he would meet her in Newport News. On the night of January the 11th, she was at his apartment. When his brother got home from work, he asked to borrow the car. They then left, went to a store, and then, as was commonplace for them two, during their times together, they would look for a location to hang out and smoke marijuana. According to McClelland, they decided to drive to Isle of Wight County, where a location was found off of Iron Mine Springs Road, which is another road that's adjacent to the tract of timber where her body was found. According to McClelland, they drove up the path. They spent some time talking, smoking marijuana, and at some point an argument began over their relationship. And Andarius tells investigators that he had the firearm on his person or in his hand at the time, and during the argument, he fired the weapon, striking Aonesty. He says he then panicked, left the area, and went back to Newport News. Subsequent to his arrest, Andarius McClelland is being held at the Western Tidewater Regional Jail on a no-bond status. So that is a brief overview of the investigative process. There's more information that you guys will gather when the search warrant affidavits and the criminal complaint are released. But that is a brief timeline of where our investigative processes were centered on between her being in Newport News on the 11th. We do know that her last known communication, there were two communications. A, she shared her location with a friend that Wednesday evening, sometime after 8 o'clock. And then she also sent another form of a communication, a text or a phone call, around 8:30 that evening on the 11th. Shortly after that, there are no more communications from Aonesty Selby's cell phone. Brief questions.
Okay, first of all, there was a call made by the family to James City County.
Correct.
To James City County Sheriff's Office, saying, hey, we have located her and this is where she is. They are claiming that nothing happened until they came around and found her body on the logging road. Can you fill that in?
So we received, as my knowledge, and Investigator Kaufman, correct me if I'm wrong, we received no information from James City County. We got the teletype early morning of the 13th that she was missing. Later that evening, the first communication that I'm aware of that we had any information on the logging path or any locations here in Isle of Wight County was when her family called on at 9-something that evening.
On the 11th?
On the 11th, yes.
Have you had any conversation with James City County to fill in the gaps of that?
No, I have not. This is the first time of hearing that they possibly contacted James City County. We've had information and we shared information with James City County throughout. They were instrumental in helping us to get to know more about Aonesty, who some of her friends were, some of the individuals that they talked to during the course of their missing person investigation.
Was there any other camera footage around the area of Blue Ridge Trail?
No. Blue Ridge Trail is an extremely rural location here in the county, so there's no other camera footage in that area.
Can you piece together for us exactly, once again, what happened once she left there and she showed up at the house? Had they been dating for a period of time?
So based on what Andarius told us, for the previous 2 months, they met at a location in Williamsburg, and over the past 2 months, they would text each other. They would arrange to meet. Either she would come here to Newport or come to Newport News. He would go to Williamsburg and meet her. And so it wasn't an everyday relationship, but it seemed like that they did have an off again, on again relationship for the past 60 days.
Any sign as you all were going through her phone that there had been past issues or any kind of arguments? I know it's a short time period, but anything else that would kind of lead you to think there may have been something?
So we did a preliminary investigation, forensic download investigation of her phone, and so that investigation is still ongoing now. But what I can tell you based on what we've seen the past couple of days, no, there was no indication that there were previous arguments, previous disputes between the two, no.
What was his demeanor while he, in your own words, was confessing to doing this?
So Sergeant Kaufman conducted that interview, and I think he's probably better able to answer that question.
And for the record, a family member is the one who told us about the James City County connection.
Okay, it may be, and I'll check that, Andy. But like I said, based on what we know during the course of the investigation, I'm not aware that that I or any of our investigators had conversation with James City County concerning that they maybe had a location share or something that evening.
So throughout the interview, he was cooperative through the interview, even though he was lying through quite a bit of it. Luckily, we had our ducks in a row, and we had the information on how we believed that the timeline played out, so we were able to pick apart his story. But he appeared remorseful. He was crying and sobbing at one point. But at the beginning of it, he was giving information, but I would say it was in half-truths. He would tell us a little bit that was true and then take us off on a different route to try to hide the real story.
But the bottom line, according to you and to the sheriff's office here, is that he confessed to shooting her, killing her, panicking, and then leaving.
Correct.
That was the critical part, of course. At
Yes.
what point did he get to that?
That was towards the end. We had to get through the weeds of all the other stories and his other versions of how things happened. But once we took away all their options and picked apart his stories, there was nothing left but the truth.
Did he say what type of an argument it was, what they were arguing about?
He did. We're not going to go into detail at this point with that, but that will eventually come out.
Okay, and where did he shoot her?
Right on the location that we
Where
found
on the
her.
body?
Yeah, we're gonna hold off on that for right now.
Just for clarity on that, inside of the vehicle or were they outside of the vehicle?
They were outside the vehicle.
Once again, her family is saying that law enforcement failed to follow up on leads and her family had to go find her body. Any other comments on that?
No.
I will say that we have reached out to Honesty's family. They were aware, actually, before we left the scene of Newport News last night, and Andarius McClelland, as he was being placed into the patrol car, investigators, actually with Sergeant Coughlin, was on the phone with her family, notifying them of an arrest. And then we'll be having some additional conversations with her family this week, filling in some of the gaps. In situations like this, it's understandable that families have a lot of questions, and we would like to have the opportunity to sit down with them to answer those questions and fill in a lot of the blanks for them. And we'll make that effort this week to do that.
Real quick, you had a search warrant from the phone. What else did you find in her phone that helped you connect the dots?
So again, the search warrant, the forensic download of the phone is in the preliminary stages over the weekend. Like everything, phones have become a part of our lives. There are many computers that people wake up in the morning, the first thing they grab is the last thing they lay down at nighttime. And so there's always a trove of information on those phones. So we were able to piece together, based on things that are on her phone, her use of the Uber app, again, her location share, some conversations that she had with other people. And so there's a lot of electronic data that we get in this cell phone dump. And so our investigators are still kind of combing through all that.
And you mentioned you had a nickname for him earlier. I imagine that was also found in text messages.
So there were, and so that was part of the investigation, is that on her Cash App and some other modes of communication, there were nicknames that she used for individuals and that they used for her. And so part of the investigators had to go back and do some research to kind of find out what were profiles and things like that nature, and that's how they ended up that even though there were different handles or login names used, that the person that was doing some communication with her was in fact, McClelland.
So in this case, the phone was critical.
So we do think that the phone was critical, and then also in any investigation, a lot of people have information, but they think maybe that information is not that important. How can that solve the case? And so that was, information in the phone was critical. I would tell you that anytime as an investigator is trying to establish a timeline is also crucial to a case. Having the Flock LPR camera system, that we were able to catch that car, which as a matter of fact, that based on those LPR cameras, that hit of that car was the only time in the past 30 days that car has left Newport News, the Newport News Williamsburg area. That car has never been to Isle of Wight County before in the previous 30 days. And so that camera was another big piece for us. And then lastly, and we'll end on this, it's good old-fashioned police work. These investigators were out, got called out Friday night. They were out all night into the early morning hours of Saturday. They went home and literally slept 4 hours. We're back out here Saturday at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and worked until 11:30 or 12 o'clock Saturday night. We made them go home Sunday and get some rest. They were back out here Monday. And so it's following up on leads, interviewing those individuals that maybe had small pieces of information about Honesty's life, about who she was involved with, who she talked with. Once we identified Andarius as a suspect, it was interviewing people that knew him, trying to shore up a timeline with him. And all that's in preparation that when you sit down in an interview room with somebody that you can begin to build that timeline and to question them on details.
Real quick, what are the three major things you got from the phone that tied him to her?
I think him sending money via Cash App. I think his address on the Uber app where the Uber dropped her off. And I just think common information shared on his phone and her phone. I think information that we got off her phone, we were able to confirm it with his phone. So.
And for the folks at home, the video, the camera system, explain that.
So
you were using some
LPR. So there's a new system that a lot of the cities here in the 7 cities, as well as throughout Virginia and other localities, are subscribing to. The brand name is called Flock, F-L-O-C-K. and basically it's a license plate reader. And so what flock cameras do is they use basically facial recognition technology, and they convert that technology to recognize cars. And so it has the ability to recognize if you were to be searching for a red Mitsubishi, you can type in red Mitsubishi, and it'll give you every red Mitsubishi that passes one of those locations, as well as you can search for license plates, partial plates. And so Isle of Wight County, as well as our neighbors on the peninsula and other locations throughout the 7 cities, are utilizing that system more and more.
Now, where was that camera located, the LPR that
located-
caught his car?
It's located on the base of the James River Bridge on the Newport News side of the bridge.
And you put in his make a car and everything, and that's the one that popped up, and
That's
you're
correct.
saying that's the first time that car had been into Isle of
That is the
Wight?
first time that we can prove, by statute, that type of data can only be stored for 30 days. And so if we can tell you that for the past 30 days, that is the only time that car is seen leaving Isle of Wight County.
Are you able to tell us why there wasn't an Ashanti alert for her?
So yeah, so an Ashanti alert, there are very strict criteria for that. And so we know that Ashanti alerts are issued for people who are kind of caught in the middle. They're too old for Amber alerts. They're too young for, silver alerts for older adults. One of the criteria for an Ashanti alert is that the person at the time that they are entered as missing, there has to be information that that person is endangered. And I really think that I can answer it from our office's perspective, but remember, James City County Police are the ones that issued the initial missing persons report. I think that early on in this investigation, when they took the missing persons report, sometimes it's hard to determine at that time the circumstances around somebody being missing. Usually it's in the course of investigating a missing person that you find out that they're endangered, and then that alert's upgraded to an Ashanti alert. So we have James City County issuing that alert mid-morning on Friday, and then unfortunately Friday evening, less than 12, 15 hours later, we're discovering her body here. So I just think that at the point that the initial, and again, this is a question for James City County, but I just think based on the normal processes of that based on the time that she was entered as missing, there wasn't enough there to prove that she was in fact endangered.
If the family had come forward, and we know this didn't happen, but if they had said that maybe she was like abducted or something like that.
Yeah, so if the family had come forward to James City County and said, hey, we filed her missing first thing this morning, now here it is midday, we have additional information, and we think she is in fact endangered, there's something, that we're utterly concerned about, then yes, James City County could have updated that to an Ashanti alert. But again, that's a question for them. I don't want to speculate on why they did or they didn't. I can just tell you in the course of the processes for our office, a person would normally be listed as missing, and then the initial investigation would take place, and then in the course of that investigation, if information arose that they were endangered, then that report would be, or that alert, missing persons report would be updated to an Ashanti alert.
Let me ask you this real quick. If you had been, Tommy Potter, had been given the same information they gave to James City County about location of the phone, where it is, how would you have responded?
So again, I don't know that, I'm not going to comment on the information that James City County may or may not have. I would tell you that our office, if we received a missing persons report, would have handled the missing persons report exactly how James City County did. We would have taken the report, we would have gathered the information, we would have sent out a teletype that would have gone to our region, Peninsula, 7 cities, pretty much the eastern half of Virginia, saying, hey, we have this individual, she's missing. If you come across her, please notify us, okay? But as far as any other information that they may have received that evening, I'm not privy to that information, so I don't want to comment on that.
Yeah, but if you had received the information that the
So
phone
if we
is
would have
located
seen,
here down on
so
the lumber
immediately,
road,
if our agency would have got it and said, hey, we have now got this information that her phone is pinging or her phone is located in Surrey County or in Newport News, we would have immediately reached out to that locality and say, hey, we have this information, this is what we have, and then we would have begun to coordinate with that agency to find out, exactly where the area is, what type of area it is, have we had any calls for service to that area? So there's a number of boxes that we would have checked.
Yeah, but you never got a call from James City County.
I'm not going to stand here today and say definitively. I can say that during the course of the investigation Friday night and through the weekend, I'm not aware of it. Are you aware that we got? We spoke to James City County concerning. Now, I will clarify that, and if I'm mistaken, then I am. But as I'm standing here today, I'm not aware that we got information. I know we had several conversations with James City concerning the missing persons report and the information they had gathered during the course of that investigation. Okay?
But you had said that they came down here to that she was abducted down here and brought down here to commit a crime. That it wasn't pre-planned or anything.
Again, I can't answer that at this point of the investigation. I mean, was obviously some pre-planning to leave Newport News, to grab a handgun, to get in a car. I mean, he made statements to his brother that he was going one place, he came here. I think those are all elements of the crime that the prosecution will have to approve during the course of a trial. You know, I can just say that on that evening, they ended up here in Isle of Wight County, and unfortunately, we recovered her body.
Was the brother, is the brother implicated?
So I do want to make that very clear, is that the brother of Andarius McClelland, we interviewed him at length. He was very cooperative. He provided us information as to the layout of his apartment, where things were located in the apartment. He was very, very cooperative. And so I do want to say that no way information at this point leads us that he was involved in this at all.
Is this considered a domestic violence related shooting?
No. They didn't live together. They don't have a child in common. So I wouldn't think it is.
All right. How long did they know each other? Do we know?
About the past 2 months.
2 months.
All right, guys, thanks for coming. Sheriff Clark has a... Sheriff, anything?
No.
You guys? Okay.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Like Deputy Paul said, she'll send out copies of the criminal complaint for the warrant. And so he was charged with second-degree murder, use of firearm, and commission of felony. It's my understanding this morning he was appointed to the Public Defender's Office to represent him. He's at Western Tidewater Regional Jail on no bond. But again, she'll send out copies of the criminal complaint as well as affidavits to some of the search warrants. And as those search warrants get filed with their respective jurisdictions, then she'll send out the return that shows items that are collected. And you guys can go to the clerk's office and get them, but I just soon send them to you to save the clerk being bombarded by everybody going to get them.
Tidewater Regional Jail.
Tidewater Regional Jail in Suffolk.
Obviously no bond, and he had a court-appointed attorney. Do we know the next court date?
I do not. That'll be up to the public defender after they meet with their client to decide that. All right, guys, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate
And
it,
I sent
guys.
you the attachments.
Good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.